I don't think that too many videographers or those looking for a top video camera consider the S1R Mark II based on early reviews, but especially now that the S1 Mark II has been released. There's something magical about how this camera renders detail, and color in particular, color detail, that is so beautiful that it's hard to go back. Hi everyone and welcome. Today I'm presenting to you my review, sort of looking back at the past 2 months with the Lumix S1R Mark II. I bought this camera to learn photography. Now it looks like this. Now the point is that I want to make, or the reason why I make this video is this. I would not have bought this camera as a video A-cam, but within using it, like basically instantly, it turned into my A-cam. And I made sure to learn its shortcomings and understand how to work around them. And as I realized that this is possible, that I can, mitigate rolling shutter problems. When I learned that I can take countermeasures to make this not overheat, then I realized this is the best thing I've ever bought. I made this video to go into detail about how I experience and deal with the shortcomings of this camera in video. But another reason is that I want to reflect on my misconception about the role of or potential of 8K for video. For the longest time, I thought it's a marketing fad or a gimmick or something that actually only, VFX professionals really need. But now that I'm using this not to shoot in 8K but to shoot in 4K, I changed my mind. What the S1R taught me about image quality is that an 8K sensor has some magic ability to render detail and color information in a way that even the 4K out of the 8K sensor oversampled just looks better than out of my 6K or out of a 4K. It's just different. The marketing of 8K is then also often just limited to people saying, yo, 8K is good so you can crop in post and reframe your shots. Personally, for me, that was never a concern or a sales point. I do crop into the open gate sensor to get 16 by 9 or 9 by 16, but within a certain aspect ratio, I don't zoom in 50 to 100% to reframe my shot within what I have. I never once even tried shooting 8K because I'm not interested with the S1R Mark II. I shoot this camera in 4K Photo 2 whenever I can, 4K 60 if I need faster readout speeds to mitigate rolling shutter issues, and I shoot it in 6.4K open gate. Again, I was with Lumix themselves, they stressed that there is no use or need for 8K in video. And there's this long-standing established interpretation that the downsides of a high megapixel sensor outweigh the benefits. Yes, the 8K sensor in this machine gets hot. You feel it when you hold the camera in your hands. And yes, rolling shutter is an issue sometimes. But when I look at the benefits, when I look at my criteria of choosing a camera, the main criteria I have is image quality. And if the color fidelity is so much better in this that I cannot really recreate this or replicate this in a different camera, then this becomes suddenly more interesting. And in comparison to the Blackmagic, I can strip this down to just the bare camera and the cage with a 28-200. However, I cannot make the Blackmagic full frame 6K, let alone the pixels, smaller. I cannot change its form factor. I cannot make it have IBIS. Yeah, so image quality first. I think this wins over both the Blackmagic 6K full frame and over the S1 Mark II. Of course, the S1R Mark II misses certain features. It does not have an OLPF filter like the Blackmagic, nor does it have the ability to record 60p in OpenGate, which is, oh, I wish I had that. I'm so jealous of that feature. But yeah, it's about the only thing I'm really missing. If this had internal B-roll recording, it would be best, but maybe there will be a recorder in the future. Overheating was never an issue in just everyday situations where I take photos and videos of a couple minutes of length, turning the camera on and off, switching between photo and video a lot. Never an issue. All the things you see, like where we're just out and about in the nature, in the city, there's never even a warning popped up. The only time where I saw an overheating warning so far was when I used the Lumix S1R Mark II to shoot continuously. I've done 19-minute classroom shootings with this camera and others as backup because I didn't trust its overheating. 80 out of 90 minutes basically just straight recording into a CF Express Type B card in 4K 422 24p ProRes 422 HQ, I think. Yeah, that was the codec. And with the fan setting to normal, factory setting, like really silent, then the fan never came up strong. And an external battery, I never had issues. I could complete the shoot in t-shirt weather, indoors, in rather damp climate, not an issue. So I don't know if it would have overheated after 2 hours or 3 hours, but honestly, I don't care. So the easiest way with this camera to avoid overheating is as simple as not using the internal battery, but using the original Panasonic Lumix dummy battery to USB-C. With external power, I don't even know if it works, the side port of this USB port here, but what I mean is a dummy battery, the original Lumix dummy battery, which replaces the normal battery here and then has a USB-C out, and you can use external power in that way and get the heat or keep the heat out. That worked wonders also in the 6.4K OpenGate mode, which, to be fair, is more risky when it comes to overheating. Let me see. While recording in 6.4K OpenGate to CF Express Type B, the overheating warning appeared after 24 minutes. At 44 minutes, the recording stopped. Again, this was with the fan speed set to the normal factory setting, which kind of helps you shoot without, having fan noise in your audio. This is the first time for me to see this screen. The camera needed a few minutes to cool down. Once the camera was operable again, I changed the fan setting to fast and started shooting right away again. So the camera was still kind of warm to hot, and I kept rolling in 6.4K OpenGate to see how far it would go now with the fan set to fast, and after an hour I just stopped because it never overheated. Pretty good. I mean, good enough for me. And that was at 25 degrees Celsius. With the fan set to fast, it's kind of affecting our audio, maybe depending on where you place your microphone, and it also draws more power. But again, when I'm using the fast setting for the fan in long-term recording, then I'm on external power anyway, so the power supply is not much of an issue, if that makes sense. So yeah. But again, you have to understand that this is something you need to decide for yourself. If it was my only camera, I would probably be more careful. But yeah, choosing the S1 Mark II over this, I would always feel like I'm missing out that little bit of color fidelity. Next, let's talk about rolling shutter. You can provoke rolling shutter quite easily without shooting sports or action scenes or doing crazy whips, just by filming down a busy road on a longer lens. So far, the only situation where rolling shutter affected my shots was when fast-moving objects, like this bus, passed my 75mm Surrey Saturn Anamorphic lens, somewhat close to the camera. Moving cars in the distance are not really an issue, but the bus passing by close to the camera looks warped. This is definitely a problem. the 35mm wider SRI lens handles the rolling shutter much better. I mean, Lumix still does not provide a 1.66 squeeze factor setting, but even 1.5 is close enough to 1.66 for the SRI Saturn anamorphic lenses, and it works beautifully. It's magical to see how Lumix now manages to mitigate any kind of wobble, including the corner wobble that we had in the S5II, no longer visible as far as I can see. It's just amazing what they did with in-body image stabilization tailored to anamorphic lenses. And then you have this E-stabilization, which you can set to off, normal, standard, or high. And I think that, you know, sometimes I feel like the SRI 35 is so wide, but that is kind of perfect. Like horizontally, it's kind of maybe 25mm or so, considering the squeeze. So even with the E-stabilization set to high, it's still very much, well, wide, but also, you know, perfect for just, you know, making walking shots look like they're shot on a gimbal. This is dynamic range boost on, high image stabilization, quick pan, dynamic range, expansion off, completely usable. So yeah, after 2 months, what am I missing in the S1R Mark II? I think, yeah, the only thing that I'm really missing is the ability to slow down open gate footage, especially with anamorphic lenses. There's no way to really work around it. But then again, I look at the image and the colors and all is forgiven. And talking about slow motion, you know, the IBIS of this camera is so good that I no longer rely on slow motion or a 60p higher frame rate footage to hide my camera shakes, which still happens with the Blackmagic. I still find myself recording in, you know, 60p just to hide weird camera movements. For transparency, I should mention that I bought the S1R Mark II before the S1 Mark II was announced. But again, I was looking for a photography first camera. And at the time when I bought the S1R Mark II, it was already clear that Lumix would soon launch in May a video first camera. Rumor had it that it would be something like an FX3 kind of style camera without a viewfinder. In the end, what we got was the S1 Mark II with a partially stacked sensor. But again, I came from a different perspective. I was not looking for a new video monster. I was looking for a photography first camera. In particular, I was looking at medium format, you know, even bigger censored cameras with higher megapixels in the 50 to 100 megapixel range. And there was especially one key moment where that kind of started. And that was when Jakob Madrasio, my filmmaking companion, shot our post-wedding photos. We bought a nice dress for Kana, I wore my suit, and I didn't want the castle in Heidelberg or any fancy location. I chose these fields here instead because they meant a lot to me. And it meant a lot to me that Jakob made these photos, these memories. He captured them. And, you know, it made me think, wow, there's so much power in still images, telling a story. Of course, with wedding photography, also the story is kind of there, but look how he captured my car. I brought this thing from Japan with me to the UK. You know, I sold this car in the UK. I knew, I was already aware, like this would be the last kind of photos of my car, and Jakob captured them in a way that look very different from my countless photos of my own car, if that makes sense. So I was playing, or I'm really considering, I was really close to buying the Fujifilm GFX100RF, compact-ish, the most compact medium format 100 megapixel camera out there with a fixed f4 lens. For $5,000 I was not ready to, you know, buy that camera for me, because it was then too limiting. What this camera has is an aspect ratio dial where you can choose aspect ratios and then really crop into that 100 megapixel sensor to still get beautiful images in all kinds of aspect ratios. That was fascinating to me. But in the end it was too compromising. F4 lens, not even stabilized, no IBIS. The Lumix S1RII is less compromising. It's more of an all-rounder, which I didn't like, to be honest. Coming from a 100 megapixel sensor, wanting that and then choosing the S1RII is a compromise in one direction. You know, considering a 24 megapixel versus 44 megapixel sensor is a compromise in a different direction, but I think this is the sweet spot. I was offered a job at Kanazawa University, famous public university in Japan, as an assistant professor, and I took the job, and the first thing I thought of when I got the offer was, oh, Kanazawa, landscape photography, you know. Kanazawa is a beautiful city, rich in history. There's former samurai quarters. It's kind of a hidden gem and popular tourist spots also for Japanese travelers. And to live here is just, I'm so blessed. I'm so happy. To the east, we're surrounded by beautiful mountains. To the west, there's the Sea of Japan with beautiful beaches. If you go somewhere new, you want to be able to, you know, share that with your families and friends. And in my case, video has been always the go-to method, but I wanted something more flexible. Photography gives me the opportunity to integrate it better in my everyday life. Taking a video when we're out and about, just hiking or walking or in the city, taking a video always takes more time for me than a photo. Editing it takes more time than a photo. I'm naturally pretty busy, and I want to focus my videography more on, you know, valuable projects for me, for my research, and less on just recreational stuff, if that makes sense. On the other hand, you know, photography has something like magical to it, I think, and I find it sad when people say like Matti Happoja in his FX2 video saying like, wow, where do people even post or share photos these days, and why do we need 33 megapixels? And in that video he mentioned that, you know, higher megapixel cameras are not good for low light, and I was like, well, you should check this out. I literally am just about to go into photography. It's never too late. Yeah, so I didn't get the GFX100RF with its 100 megapixel sensor, but I have 44.3 megapixels, which are still way enough for me to go into these X-band style photos for landscapes, and that's been so much fun for me. And while I don't have a dedicated aspect ratio dial, I still have, what, 5 now, we have one more, custom modes on the dial. And in photo mode, I used one of those custom modes for this X-band style aspect ratio. So I kind of have my aspect ratio dial anyway, self-made. In the end though, what really made me decide for the S1R Mark II over the GFX 100 RF was to go to a camera shop and hold this camera in my hands. Of course, without a cage, just the body with a lens. They had it on display with the 24-100 kit lens, but I asked them, can I please hold it in my hands with the 28-200 super zoom? That struck the deal for me. Because for me it was, while full frame and kind of bulky still, it was usable. I knew this is an everyday carry for me. I can use that. I can bring that anywhere. I can easily pack it. It's weather sealed if I wanted to. And it allows me to go a little bit into video, which turned out to be, you know, an amazing experience, regardless. Of course, Blackmagic will now come with the Pixis 12K. See, there is some trend going on with higher megapixel cameras in full frame. But if I compare this to the 12K, I mean, the 12K will be what? So expensive in comparison. I think in the end, this camera strikes a perfect balance for me regarding price and image quality and usability. And again, I would buy it again if only for video, but having this to switch between video and photo and take photos that just look good straight off the camera, using Lumix Lab in this sense has been so much fun to quickly share this with friends and family worldwide. That was my goal, and Lumix delivered in all ways. So yeah, that's my take on the S1R Mark II. It surprised me in so many ways that I thought I'd make this video. Thanks for watching.